You smell that?
Nature's most powerful aphrodisiac.
Leaving right after this drink. Rock and roll, whiskey, and other stories. With your host, Brian Shaw.
Cheers. And welcome to episode 18 of I'm Leaving Right After This Drink, Rock and Roll, Whiskey, and Other Stories. And so, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, maybe you found it here on YouTube or a friend of yours, recommended it. I don't really see that, but you know what? Just humor me for a second. I spent a long time in the radio and TV business, and I got to meet some really cool people along the way. I got to share some really good times with some great people. I also got to share some shitty times with a few great people. And so this is what my podcast is all about, just kind of, talking about all those things that happened from, all those awesome days in the entertainment industry. And even a bad day in the entertainment industry was still a pretty damn good day, because you know what? I wasn't really doing like a real job. So that was always the upside, right? No matter how bad it was, at least I wasn't out digging a ditch or working in a steel mill or whatever the hell, man. So I got to say, thanks for that. So anyhow, and also, it always helps to enjoy this podcast if you're having a cold one, some sort of adult beverage. I'm just having to be drinking a Jack on the Rocks, and so I'll have another one. So before we get into tonight, make sure you guys like and subscribe, and and even share with your friends. Yeah, I know some of you don't like sharing, but some of you do. I don't know where the fuck this is going. We're just having a good time, and I'm having a couple of drinks. So tonight, I thought I would do something a little bit different, because I've told a lot of stories about, being in the business and doing some really cool things, again, with some cool people, and got to experience a lot of fun stuff. But I thought tonight I would dive into one of my guitars in my guitar collection. And I will tell you that this Fender Squier means a lot to me. A lot of memories with this guitar. It was the first guitar my parents ever bought for me when I was first learning to play guitar. The first guitar I ever had was like this brown and black harmony guitar. And I don't know if anybody knows those kind of guitars, but they weren't the greatest. But whatever. I think my parents got it just to make sure, like, okay, is he going to stick with it? Are we going to pay for a guitar and then he's not going to use it? So I think they just kind of got me that. But along with that, they got me a really kick-ass Fender Princeton amp, which I found out recently is actually worth some dough these days. Of course, I don't have it any longer, but it is what it is, right? I'm sure a lot of the toys and shit that I had back in the day are worth, some decent money these days. Anyhow, back to the guitar. For those of you that don't know, I love rock and roll. I love guitars. They're just cool pieces of art to me. And this one, again, is very special to me because it is the first guitar that my parents bought for me when I was starting out on a guitar. This guitar is probably about 35 years old. It is still all the original equipment, except, of course, the strings. But this guitar has made many trips around the country with me. It has seen a lot of things, as this one has definitely been around. And at a certain point, I decided to start getting this guitar signed by different artists that I got to meet along the way. And so I thought tonight I would just kind of talk about this guitar and some of the signatures on it, maybe a couple of the stories that are around, some of the signatures and things like that are actually on this guitar. And so what I did find out recently, when I had it all clear coated finally, was that this guitar is faded pretty bad. And it used to be a lot more white than what it was. And it's kind of turned this cream color now. But it is the original pickguard. Like I said, still all the original stuff on it. And it is a Korean Squier. And when I had it set up from my buddy at Onstage Music, and by the way, if you're ever in this area, being the Tampa area, you guys can always hit up Onstage Music. He definitely knows his shit up there, and has definitely been a good guy to know, and is setting up a lot of my guitars and doing a lot of work on them now for me. So I appreciate Kenny up there at Onstage Music. So anyhow, He went in, he reset this up for me. Once I had it clear coated, I had to take all the equipment, all the electronics out of it, all the strings off, just basically, give the body back to my buddy Mo, who works at Mo Colors. Nice little plug for Mo Mo Colors for his awesome paint job skills on a couple of guitars that I have. I'll get into those, I'm sure, at a later date. You've heard me talk about Mo before, and he's another awesome guy. But I wanted him to kind of maybe touch up a few things on here, and he's like, "Dude, that's not going to happen," because I couldn't even think about matching that color at this point. So I was like, "All right, whatever." So anyhow, back to this guitar. I'm pretty sure that the first person to ever sign this guitar was the one and only Zakk Wylde. And that happened February 22nd, 1997. So this was, I was in Roanoke, Virginia at the time, and Zakk was on his Book of Shadows record. And to this day, I still love that record. It is one of my favorite albums, if not my favorite album of all time, quite honestly. I absolutely love that record and always have since the first time I ever heard it. Even though the first time I heard it, I'm like, what is this? It's so mellow, but yet it was so fucking awesome. And I still love that album. Anyhow, so Zakk was one of the first to sign it when I had the pleasure of meeting him for the first time of many times in Roanoke, Virginia, as he came and did this show for us at this little warehouse. I shouldn't say little, it held a couple thousand people, but quite a crazy show, to be totally honest, because, at the time, Zakk was still throwing back a few. And I believe there was a story going around that he almost beat up our sound guy because our sound guy, I don't think, was that great. And so that was a little odd. I do have some photos somewhere where Zakk's heel from his cowboy boot that he was wearing broke. And there's literally photos of him hammering a nail into the heel to repair the boot. I'll have to see if I can dig that up and throw it up here on the video, but don't count on it. That's probably one of those photos that's long gone. Who knows though? But anyhow, man, he did an awesome show for us. It was just an acoustic show because that album is super mellow. So it was just him and another guitarist, and who later got into some trouble. So we won't mention who that was, but if you know anything about Zakk's career, you kind of know who I'm talking about there. But it was an incredible night, super fun. Zakk was as awesome as they get, and it was, again, the first time that I met him. Let's see, who else got to sign this guitar? I got to sign it like it's something that, like I was somebody important. Kenny Wayne Shepherd signed this guitar. And again, still in Roanoke, Virginia. Roanoke, Virginia, man, I got to meet some really cool people. And so Kenny Wayne signed this. And here was the funny thing about Kenny Wayne. And at the time, I think Kenny Wayne was still probably like, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. He was on the road with Aerosmith. And we were doing a show with Aerosmith and at the Roanoke Civic Center, I believe. Kenny was opening up that show. And I had to pick up Kenny from the hotel and drive him to the bar where we were doing a pre-show. And so the crazy thing about that was it was snowing, and we had this piece of shit minivan. And this, like, I can't even remember what kind of minivan it was, but it was terrible. And it had like, the bicycle tires on it that are about 6 inches wide. I mean, this thing had fucking 200,000 miles on it already at the time. It was terrible. And when I tell you it was terrible, it was bad. And I remember driving down the highway, just white knuckling it, thinking, my God, if I veer off the road and kill Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Jesus, this is going to be fucking horrible. But, it was crazy. It was, it was a fun ride to ride with, with Kenny and his couple of band members. But I do remember Kenny kind of had this fucking like arrogance about him. And I'm not knocking it, because I think if I was 19 years old and I was touring the fucking country with Aerosmith, I'd probably have a little bit of an attitude also. But he was a nice guy. He signed the guitar. He was super cool about it. And yeah, so Kenny Wayne was on here. We also have Tommy Shannon and Chris Layton, who are, of course, from Stevie Ray Vaughan's Double Trouble. Met those guys also at WROV in Roanoke, Virginia. And Tommy Shannon and Chris Layton came through town with a band called Storyville. blues band, super cool. Of course, this was way, 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 way beyond Stevie Ray and his death and all that stuff. But those guys, super cool. I remember them performing a song or two in the studio. I had the pleasure of interviewing those guys, and super, super fun day with them. They did a show with us at a little bar called Scooch's, which I don't believe Scooch's is anywhere around anymore, but did plenty of shows there and definitely had many a drunken nights at Scooch's in Roanoke, Virginia. Let's see, who else do we have on here? We have Gary Hoey. Gary Hoey, of course, been a friend of mine now for about 25 years. And he signed this for me when we had our internet radio station going, mfnrocks.com, which we've talked about in previous episodes as well. And Gary came by probably a handful of times into that studio over a couple of years and promoting his Christmas album, as well as just promoting, anything that was going on in the area at the time. So Gary was always fun, still great to go and see. I believe he's got some new material coming out maybe this year. And, of course, always catch him on his Christmas tour if you can. What else do we got here? Oh, Bruce Kulick is on here. Bruce Kulick is down here, I believe. And so Bruce came down to the internet radio station, mfnrocks.com. And Bruce came down a couple of times, came down once with Union when he was with John Karabi doing that band. What else? He also came in a couple of times to promote his solo disc, Audio Dog, which was really cool. And Bruce was just always such a nice guy. And he came down to that studio 2 or 3 times as well. And he was always just like one of the nicest and sweetest guys. And we always had some great conversations and great stories, from his solo career to being in Kiss and, taking the place of Ace Frehley and wearing the makeup versus not wearing the makeup. And of course, Bruce never wore the makeup, but, Bruce was on one of my favorite Kiss albums of all time. He was on Revenge. And that is still one of my favorite Kiss albums. Let's see, who else is on here? Man, I can't think of who that autograph is right now. That's crazy. I thought I knew who everybody was on this guitar, and right now I can't seem to think. Who the hell is that? Who is that? Is that Ian Moore? That's Tommy Shannon up there. That's Tommy Shannon up there. Ian Moore is down here, and some of you may or may not know who Ian Moore is, but Ian Moore was a blues guitarist and a phenomenal guy, and got him in the studio at mfnrocks.com once, and he performed live a couple of times, or a couple songs in there. And, he took over the studio a little bit and playing some of his favorites. So that was quite an experience. Ian, super cool guy, great rock music. And his first 2 or 3 albums are absolutely phenomenal. He kind of lost me in about album 4 or 5, I guess, probably 5, because I think And All the Colors was really the last album that I really loved. Got the Green Grass was a super good record. Modern Day Folklore, of course, his debut album was really cool with Harlem and How Does It Feel and Deliver Me, and some really cool songs. So if you guys are into the blues, man, definitely check out early Ian Moore, because it is definitely some good stuff. And lastly, the last guy to sign this guitar before I had it clear coated, the one and only Al Pitrelli. And of course, we talked about Al in the previous episode with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and getting the big shout out and how cool it was for me to get that. But you know what? When I had interviewed Al a couple different times over the phone on mfnrocks.com, of course, promoting the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Interviewed him once also at WROV when he was promoting the Wake of Magellan album with Sabotage. And, Al was a fantastic interview, especially the first time I interviewed him, because he likes to talk. And as a guy who was just still getting his feet wet as far as interviewing people, it helped that Al could talk. And, I can remember asking some silly questions, of course, at the time, which was, again, showing how green I was in the business. And, I can remember asking Al one time, I think it was on the song Blackjack Guillotine, and I was like, what's that song about or whatever? And he's like, I don't know, man, but I love the riff. And of course, if you know that song, it's a badass guitar riff. And Al has played with everyone, man. Like, Al is just like this savant when it comes to music. Like, I don't even know how else to put it. But anybody who can play with Celine Dion and Michael Bolton and Dee Snider and Megadeth and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and just the list goes on and on with all the bands that he has played with. And when you can do all that and you're that versatile, it is something to be said. And of course, you got to be a likable guy when you're playing with all those different artists and egos and such. But so the other thing about Al was he was a friend of mine's neighbor. He is a friend of mine's neighbor, not was. He still is. And he was so cool. And this was back in September when I went up to the Poconos to see the Zakk Wylde Berserkerist Fest. And I popped open the guitar. I got the picture of me and Al from like 1998. And I always joke around with that photo because it's like Al was definitely not impressed. And so it's just a really cool picture of me and him, hanging out after the show with Savatage. And the cool thing was like it was the picture like immediately took him. He's like, dude, where that was like in Virginia or something, right? I was like, yeah, man, that was Jack's nightclub in somewhere right outside of DC in Virginia, and got to meet all the guys from Savatage at the time, and it was such a cool club. Like that rock club got everybody, got all those 80s bands and shit like that, and all the cool bands from the 90s that were still rolling through. And Al took a look at this guitar and he's like, dude, this is a sweet guitar. And he's like, I played on a Squier. Like one of my first guitars I ever had was a Squier. And he's like, dude, this is a really cool guitar. So that made it even more special, the fact that somebody like Al Petrelli would tell me how fucking cool of a guitar this was. And of course, adding his signature last year just made it that much more fucking cool. So anyhow, man, we will wrap it up about this guitar. I love this guitar. I don't even know what year it is. I don't think it really matters. It's probably like, I don't know, man. It's got to be an early 90s of some sort. It's not USA made or anything. It's, like I said, I believe it's Korean made. But, everybody who's played on it has said it's really fucking cool for a Squier, and I love it. Like I said, it's one of the first that I got. It's the first one that my parents bought for me. I have another one that was the first one that I bought. We'll get into that one in a future episode, and I can tell you some stories in regards to that guitar as well. But that's just kind of what we're doing here, man. We're just kind of covering the bases. I've mixed it up a little bit, telling some stories about, some of the folks I've met. We've talked about some of the shows I've been to recently. We've talked about, just different things that have happened, in past weekends or whatever. And so I just thought I'd change it up a little bit and kind of talk a little bit about the guitars, because I do think I have a pretty fucking awesome collection. And, my friends think I'm crazy when I say I'm going to buy another guitar, because why? Because they're like, really? And I go, I know. I don't play in a band, and I certainly shouldn't have as many guitars as I do. 4 is okay as I play, as I like to say. But you know what? Like I said earlier, the guitar to me is just a beautiful instrument, and you can do so much with this guitar. And, the different paint jobs and styles and everything just makes it so fucking cool. And so, like I said, we'll wrap it up. But everybody, thanks again for tuning in. As always, man, leave your, comments, suggestions, questions, whatever, here on the video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. It always helps. And I know everybody's telling you to do it, but of course, we all appreciate it. And, we'll see you next time. It's leaving right after this drink. Rock and roll, whiskey, and other stories. I don't know why I just did that. That is the first time I've done that in all 18 episodes. And it was almost like I had a flashback to radio. Like when you come out of the song and you do a little chatter and then you go on 96.3 WROV and you fucking hit the commercials. So I don't know why I just said my name on my podcast again. Oh yeah, but make sure down in the description, you can also buy a t-shirt if you want to. There's a link there for that. So anyhow, everybody, thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. We're coming up on 20 minutes, and I've always said I try and make these less than 20 minutes. So thank you. Cheers. Yes, just under 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. You dig?
God bless the internet.